Hey, FanboyNation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
We're watching
Fanboy.
Fanboy, etc.
FanboyNation.
Dot, I assume Tom.
Five years ago, I spoke with this woman about her book, Pomegranate. Now we are talking about her film adaptation of the same title. Weam Namou, my Chaldean cousin, how are you today?
Hi, thank you for having me again.
I mean, it's been 5 years, my God, and time flies. You know, what is it like? You know, you wrote the book, you have this message, and we'll remind everybody, the film is about a liberal Muslim woman that ends up in a Christian neighborhood outside of Detroit.
Yes, and a conservative Chaldean community. Poor girl.
And it's essentially reopening the scars of back home and bringing it into the new world. You know, when you first wrote the book, how important was it for you to touch upon this, Islamic Christian relations? Because, back home, we're the minority, and now America is considered a Christian majority country, but it's not really as Christian as everyone would like it to be.
Very true. I really like that perspective of what you're saying. So I actually originally wrote it as a script. And the script was selected a quarter finalist by Francis Coppola's Zoetrope. And then I got the attention of Buffalo 8 and other producers from LA and even locally. And it started developing into a movie before I wrote the book. The reason I wrote the book, I started my writing career as a book publisher. This is my favorite genre, is to write books, my favorite format to tell stories. As we put the cast together, and I thought, this is going to be the first time that I direct actors for a feature film. And I thought, well, how am I going to do this? I read a little bit, listening on different tactics that different directors did. I realized that if I write the book, I will get more intimate in the story, and I will share the intimacy that you get from writing a book is a little bit different because you can put more of the emotions. You're very restricted with a script. And I had all the cast and crew read it for them to really understand their role. And by the time we got on the set, we knew the story inside and out. And so we used every single scene that was in the script, that was in the film. So that to give you an idea why I did it this way, because this story is very important to me. And regarding the Christian-Muslim relationship, that relationship has always been important for me because I was born in Baghdad. I know you were born here. Have you ever been to Iraq? I'm wondering.
No, I've never been. My dad's from Iran and my mom's from Lebanon, but I've never been to either one. Yeah.
You've never been there. So I was born in Baghdad, and my best friend who lived across the street, her name was Niran. She was Shia Muslim. And we both suffered as a consequence of the political arena there. And then in 2016, I saw the same situation resurface with the elections. And I was saddened by what I was seeing because I felt like we left Iraq so that we can enjoy the type of democracy in the United States where we can have different political views and be of different backgrounds, but to actually still be civil about the whole situation.
From the cradle of civilization to being uncivilized.
People were just like taking off their gloves and going on social media and just going at it with each other. So I tried that for a little bit. I was like punched out very quickly from the arena. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to gather my creative energy and I'm going to write a script. I'm going to write a story based on what I'm seeing. So that's where that came to be. Funny thing is, it did not get released until the story reinvented itself during the next elections, the 2024.
Okay,
Right?
so
You
yeah.
know, God works in mysterious ways, they say. Well, this story came out when it was supposed to come out because now, but there was a different angle by that point. The elections were, there was, I mean, things were happening. And I remember our executive producer, Scott Rosenfeld, who was a producer of Home Alone, he called me and he was laughing. He said, you know, this is, what is that? Something virtual, alternative reality. People are going to say, like, did you really write the script for the 2016? Or did you make, you know, and we were laughing about that, about the coincidence. But I think the story right now is incredibly important because I said the characters, through the characters, we were able to address very, very important issues in our communities that people were shying away from, especially at that time. Now people are opening up more, which I think we need to be. We need to be more honest about our communities, about what happened to the Christians. I started realizing that some people, mostly from the Middle East. I mean, so the film has gone on to win over 50 international awards and probably closer to
Congratulations.
60. It's just we really have lost count because you submit a film and then the festival doesn't show up until 8 months later and you get notifications. So the film continues to win awards all over the world. You know, you're talking about India, the Netherlands, France, everywhere, Japan, all over the United States. Where is it not winning anything?
I'm gonna guess Iraq for one.
Well, I wish it was only Iraq. Not one single Arab country has recognized it. Not even the ones that focus on women issues and women filmmakers. Not even the ones that are based in the U.S.
Hmm. You would think that at least Lebanon and Egypt would be the first two.
Nothing. And we actually had the reverse happen, you know, with some book talk cancellation, first ever in my book career and film career, cancellations, and these are not even at places where we're related to, excuse me, to Middle Eastern venues. These were other venues. So if I was to tell you the one challenging, I recently was interviewed by a newspaper about what was the biggest challenge or what was the one thing that surprised you guys, whether myself or the crew. And I said, well, the challenge was, and the surprise was this response from your own community. And that went for the Muslims and the Christians, because the Muslim family in the film is played by all Muslims. The main character, everybody is really Muslim in the Muslim family and Christian in the Christian family, except the little girl, she's Christian, but she played, you know, but that was the adults and everybody and the main character. And when you see we have interviews with them saying how much they loved the film, how they felt like it represented our stories. And I'm going to share something with you.
Please.
Shortly after the film was released, so the film came out during Women History Month in March of 2025, and we had our premiere in LA. And on September 4, 2025, the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, ISPU report, published a paper called Stereotypes on Screen, the Effects of Muslim Portrayals in Entertainment Media on Attitudes Toward Democracy and Policy. And it highlights how negative Muslim tropes in media increase prejudice and support for discriminatory policies. Conversely, positive and diverse representations reduce fear and foster opposition to such policies. And they're right. However, I think the Middle East has an issue, and people of Middle Eastern background, on being able to philosophically address their issues, but not in action.
Right. It's interesting in this regard. You know, you went far more philosophical, by the way, in starting with the script and then going to the novelization. Whereas my mindset was, I want to retain all the rights and I don't want anyone to steal my script, so I'd write the novel first. That way I could, I'm more pragmatic that way. But it's interesting because people have become so sensitive to various things that they don't want to offend anybody. And yet our community, Assyrian, Chaldean, Syriac, we have too many names because it's been divided along theological lines, not cultural lines or ethnic lines. We lost 750,000 people in 1915, and that was a third of the population. Tur Abdin went from 250,000 people to 2,000 people in Turkey. And the Iran-Iraq War, especially the 2000 version, not the one in the early 90s that lasted 100 hours, we lost 500,000 people. And we continue to see this today, yet it's very silent. And I think this is also a wound that kind of carries over, especially into America. When addressing those wounds with not only the novel, but the film, how do you find the balance of, not necessarily victimhood, but dealing with that bitterness?
Because I wrote it from a place of love. I love our community with all their faults, all the things that I even, vent about them at night to a sister or cousin. Like, I have a long list, believe me. But at the core, I love my community. I was born there for a reason. I'm a very faith-based person. I believe there was a reason that I came here. There is a reason that I'm a writer and a storyteller. There is a lack of diversity about our stories. But I'm also at a point where, for a long time, learned that it's not about pointing fingers. It's about taking accountability for where we are, why we are where we're at. So this report, which required a lot of funding, a lot of grants, a lot of years writing it, could have literally funded several films by Middle Easterners to get out into Hollywood. One of our biggest issues is the funding.
Right.
So there was a long report on the complaining of the situation that I have heard over and over. But what we did, our team, is we all came together to address that wound through a beautiful story that was honest, that did not portray us as victims, that did not portray the women as victims. The women are very strong. They're very beautiful. They're really what I see when I go to another Middle Eastern woman's house. And Iranians have that same thing. We're not, even though this is an Iraqi family, because I am writing of what I know specifically, but the Middle East, for the most part, I've traveled in so many of the homes there, and I've had friends from different backgrounds, and grew up watching Egyptian films. That's what we grew up on. It was Egyptian films, and then the Lebanese were the next, and the Syrians. Actually, Iraq was not one of the countries that was strong in this area. So I grew up learning, and I think that the story, the way it has so much heart and love, and comes from those times. Times has changed. The Iraq I grew up in as a child is not the same Iraq of today.
Right.
It's not at all. And I visited there in 2000, and it's also changed quite a bit since then. So if we're tired of being victims, then let's tell a different story. But that report is another way of victimhood, like, oh, well, Hollywood is not doing this. Well, what are you contributing to help Hollywood tell this? And is this even true? Because if this was the case, and you want films like ours who represent our community, Christians and Muslims, that would have been the perfect opportunity. We have our producer, Sam Sacco. He's he works with Hollywood producers, and he's out there. And our executive producer, Scott Rosenfeld, he's out. So it's not true, but it's what the narratives that we tell ourselves, and it's harder to break from that box. It's harder to do that, and it's easier just to write a research paper or an investigative report about how the situation is.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've pulled something off, that there's even humor in it, and it's unintentional in one scene, and I will tell you, where all the Middle Eastern parents keep slapping their kids, you know, and I know that it's for emphasis, but to me, it's some of the funniest things in there because it's unintentionally funny, but it's funny to us because we're so used to it. Yeah. When
I got
the
everybody laughed. You know, when
uh,
we did a premiere in LA, but then we did a screening because everybody and locally they said, are you guys gonna do a local screening? And I gotta tell you, whether it was Middle Easterners or not, people were laughing so much at the mom, Hasina. She is the one that won the show
yeah,
because at the end, because she was the funniest.
right.
And at the end, something about reality
Mm,
is humorous.
yeah.
Our real stories, it's more humorous. If I try to do it with an agenda, like I'm trying to show, oh, these are such good people, oh, these are bad, people will feel it. And what people felt in this is the heart of the film and the honesty and authenticity of it.
With something like this and the significance of it, like let's pull back because we want people to see Pomegranate. It's out from Freestyle Media right now, so they're able to see it. There are aspects of being Middle Eastern, especially being Middle Eastern Christian, that we get asked the most ridiculous questions. Yeah. So my father being Assyrian, my mother being Lebanese, and then they find out I'm Middle Eastern, and they're like, but you have blue eyes because apparently that's nothing, that's uncommon for people. Often ask, oh, you're Christian. When did you convert? And I have to tell them at Pentecost,
Hmm.
because we're from the Middle East, that's where the religion started. And they're like, oh, who taught you Christianity? And then I have to sit there and go, well, my father's side, St. Thomas the Apostle, and my mother's side, Saints Peter and Paul. And they said, didn't Thomas go to India? And I said, you think St. Thomas left Jerusalem, passes through Syria, Iraq, Armenia, Iran, and all these places, tells everybody, wait, I'll be back just to stop in India? You don't think he evangelized on the way? And they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So it's interesting to see how people don't have those full comprehension that we've been there from the very beginning to now thinking that we're more recent converts, which makes no sense to me. But there are those hardships that we also have to face here because people are also suspicious of us in that regard of are they real Christians? Did they convert to Christianity? What's their story? And we kind of have to, ride this line of, well, we're American, but we're not really American, and we're Middle Eastern, but we're not Muslim. So we don't really fit into either world in that regard. Is that something that you've noticed, or is this just personal anecdotes for myself?
No, I think what you're pointing out, one of the reasons I had a meeting with a colleague yesterday, a writer, and she teaches at U of M. And she said, how do you produce so much work? And I said, I've sensed with my work, I used to think, how can I think part of Middle Easterners that comes with the package is wanting to serve somehow. I just think it's just part of our blood. That's, why we have, and I'm using this in a positive way, the word tribal, where we take care of each other, So, but at the same time, we come from an ancestry that they built the cradle of civilization. Most people are not aware of our history because the British in 1921 changed the name Mesopotamia to Iraq. And so most people, including in church, they'll talk about Mesopotamia and talk about Mesopotamia as if it's this land, this, mystical land that was thousands and thousands of years ago and no longer exists. It exists in Iraq. It's just the name was changed.
Yeah.
It was part of Iran, part of, yeah. So they changed the history, the remembrance, even within its people. When you change people's ancestry through, whether it's through name or however, through land, also they also mapped out the place. And then the other thing that happened before that was when the Muslim and Arab invaded the area, and at that time, the whole region was the majority were Christians who spoke Aramaic, and that changed to them being Muslims who are speaking Arabic. And so I started learning actually from the resistance that I was getting. I started looking into this even more and seeing how much we have suffered and how much people try to erase our names and our voices. So I think part of why I push to create these projects is because there is a sense of service at the end of it. Is that if we don't do this, then I will be another person who's just writing a research report and putting it out there and not feeling like I'm doing my part. So my part, including in Pomegranate, including in the next project that I'm working on, is to bring awareness to our culture, to our name, to our heritage, and yeah, how we survived with other communities. We are more, the reason to distinguish the difference, because some people say, oh, you know, we're all the same, there's no difference. Well, I don't know about that. I think there's a difference between men and women. There's a difference between, you know, if my role is a teacher versus a writer, there's a difference in everything.
Right.
But it's acknowledging, you know, you have to be honest about the difference so that you can learn and you can understand. We can't just, oh, okay, there is a sameness in that we are all human. Yes, that we agree on. And there can't never be question. There is an agreement on everybody should be respected, regardless. There's an agreement on that. But there is certain agreements that you look at the situation and from observation, you say, well, one of the reasons that Christians were able to more easily assimilate and acclimate is because we really still had that Western side in us from our religion, as well as coming from an ancient lineage who built the cradle of civilization. We were the initial, you know, we invented writing, the first city states. So many of the things that the Western world is using and has really expanded on and flourished with started in that region. And it's more like we're us coming home. But what we're doing, we're coming home and bringing along with us the Eastern Christian traditions, the heart of where Jesus came from, and kind of there's a different angle to that. You know, there's a different perspective. So the way I view it is that if the West really takes the time to understand the indigenous people of Iraq, Chaldeans, Assyrians, Syriacs, even the Jews, which also were a lot of the minority and indigenous people who have really not had that same type of opportunity or platform, people would benefit from that to understand the difference.
Yeah. The beautiful part in this is that you've also casted a Chaldean actress in the role of a Chaldean. So, you know, she's playing against type at this point. But Natalie Butros is in the film, you know, and how important was it to find somebody like Natalie and then also someone like Samia Rahmani, who respectively play Niran and Mary? What is, you know, when you found these two performers and they would be at times butting heads, to put it mildly, you know, what was the interaction in finding them and then putting them with each other, and then how did they build their character relations together?
Robert, this is why I think this is why I believe in God. Okay, I had nothing to do with this part. I can't take credit. It just landed that way. When we found Samia, I found Samia because what she did is, our casting director is also Sam Sako, but what she did something she wasn't supposed to do because she was very smart. She emailed me directly, and her agent did put her in the casting website and stuff like that, but she emailed me directly and when I saw the reel, and I thought, oh my gosh, this woman is beautiful. Now at that point you can't really see, you know, she doesn't sit there and say, oh, I'm of Iraqi origin, I'm Muslim, I'm this, you know, she's showing. And all I saw was this talented, I knew she was Middle Easterner, of Middle Eastern background, but I saw this talented woman and I loved her. So do you know, when I found out of her background is after, so when I saw her and I said, Sam, take a look at this. And then we had somebody else that was a part of the decisions. And we all liked her. Then when she came to do an audition, and it was during COVID that they were doing, so everything was online, she comes and I said, okay, tell us a little bit about your background. And then she tells me, and I thought, I just couldn't, I was shocked. We just thought, what a perfect setup. Same thing with Zayn. Actually, Zayn Shami, who plays Hasina, was the hardest one to find because we wanted to find somebody who's a hijabi, has a certain body figure, who has the humor. So she was harder. And again, she comes on the audition after we had one night where we met and they said, oh, what about we bring this or that person, like a famous actor who's kind of retired and that would love to have this. And we're going all through all this list. And like Christy Alley, somebody mentioned, and I said, I mean, we really wanted to be authentic. And that night I saw that she had just posted very late. And I looked at her work and I said, let's check this person out. She's in LA also. And then the story of Natalie Butros. The woman that was supposed to play Mary flaked on us. We had a contract and she got and I'm not going to bring up her name or anything, but she got a very big opportunity with a very major production. So when we came to film, we got an email from her agent saying that, oh, she's doing another role. She can't commit to this. We said we will have a contract. So I told Scott and he contacted her agent and her agent contacted me. He said, oh, I know, like this was a breach of contract. And he said, to be honest with you, he said, most films, even after the contract, they don't make it. Most scripts, even if they get to the development stage or even pre-production, they don't go beyond that. And we were filming during the time that we had on the contract. So that night, Scott was in the Philippines. He was working on a film over there. And we get on a phone. It's like 3 a.m. here because of the time difference. He said, and I didn't know so much about him on this part, but he is also faith-based. And he told me a story of what had happened to them when the weather went really bad in one of their films that they were shooting, and how they prayed over the land, the natives, and he said the weather got good. He said, don't be surprised if you look locally for that talent. Don't be surprised if you find that Mary in your neighborhood. And that's what happened.
And then you went to St. Peter's Church and you found her on Sunday.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. How did you know?
Honestly, I was just kidding.
He came into my house, to be even more exact. And I just thought, I said, hey, we're shooting in a couple of weeks. Can you, and she was like, and she took on the opportunity. Yeah, I have to, all of that, I gotta say, I can't take any credit for that. I just think like the reason divine intervention happened is because the story had to be told in the way it was told.
Yeah, and the pomegranate itself is a layered fruit, and it's unified, but the interior is also divided. You have to pluck out the seeds themselves and eat them. How significant was the pomegranate itself to the initial concept of the story?
It's very important, and it's part of the story that it's for me, it's more like the reveal at the more than even other things that happen, where the meaning of the pomegranate really comes forth. I want to also add something before I forget. There's another character in the film that doesn't have a face, but she's a very important character. The Muslim woman, the young lady, that the main actress, is influenced a great deal by poet Enheduanna. Enheduanna, she was the daughter of Sargon, King Sargon. She was a priestess, a princess, and she's the first recorded writer in history. The reason that is because before her, there was the Epic of Gilgamesh and others, but prior to her, writers, scribes, they did not, traditionally, they did not sign their names. So Enheduanna, she signed her name, and she said at the end of her poetry, it is I, Enheduanna, who wrote this, something my king has never done before. So she started the first person narrative and the idea of signing your name to your writing and taking ownership. And I only found this out much later in life and realized what happened is the British archaeologists, they found her disc in 1921. And prior to that, people did not know about her because another thing that region really does not highlight, not only different backgrounds, but also especially women. And so here's Niran, the main character. She's influenced by Enheduanna and Enheduanna's poetry and her freedom and her stature. So she was another character. And then the pomegranate has a biblical meaning of fertility and love. And it's in Arabic, it's Roman. And that word has Hebrew roots, Roman. And the Hebrew have a special, they really have a special respect for pomegranate. Now, that aside of what the historical significance, yes, we are separated by these borders, as this really reminds me of what Earth looks like. You know, you look inside from far, we're round, and you look inside and we have all these borders and everybody's in their own space, but we all are the same in the sense that we are all humans, despite the different borders. That sameness is very important, and we're just separated by borders. But again, I think the difference with humans is that we do have different ideas, different thinking, we have to acknowledge that too. And so what the movie does is at the end, yes, we have that sameness, but we have to be able to have the freedom to verbalize our thoughts, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom, whatever the freedoms of the West that has to offer, these are blessings. Just like the pomegranate, the seeds are considered God's blessings for the Hebrews and the biblical meaning. Well, to me, what we are offered in the West are blessings that we need to know how to utilize, no matter what our background is.
That's beautiful. And how did you get with your distributor, Freestyle Digital Media?
I had a producer's rep that found them for me. My producer's rep, what he did from Circus Entertainment, I think it's his company. He's amazing. Well, most people, the first thing that happened when they see Pomegranate is they love this. Really, they love the story because it's a fun thing to watch. So he watched it immediately and said, "I'll sign you on." And then he said, "I'm just gonna start reaching out to different distributors and see which is a good distributor that fits with yours." And Freestyle Media, what I liked about them, they really, really believed in the story. And we had a meeting, Scott Rosenfeld, myself had a meeting with their team, and we just finalized, some things, and then we moved forward from that. But the process, I gotta tell you, I'm making it sound easy. It's not. From the time we signed with them to the release was almost a year, because it has to go through quality control, all the paperwork. It was really, that's why I say, we can spend our time in researching and pointing things out, or we can support filmmakers or make our own films, or people that want these stories to be seen and want to distill stereotypes, to invest in people who are trying to do this, because it is a lot of work.
Leanne, before I let you go, because I know we're running out of time, what would you like a Christian audience to get from Pomegranate? What would you like a Muslim audience to get from the film? And then what would you like a secular audience to see?
Okay, so I'll start from the Christian. What I want the Christian to know is that we have the Christians of the Middle East. All the Christians of the Middle East have an incredibly rich history. And given all that they've gone through, they need to be heard and seen. And there's a lot of benefit in learning from them. And we are very grateful that these countries have provided a new home for us. But at the same time, We were brought here to also so others can learn from us and our history. For the Muslim community, it is very true that the majority of the Muslims are incredibly peaceful people and want what we all want to experience. But they have to address their own issues and look within, and to acknowledge that the Middle East is diverse and the Muslim community is diverse, and that they can't just rule with one voice, because it's actually working not so good for their own people. It's actually hurting Muslims and them having that one voice and doing something like trying to block a beautiful, loving film from reaching its full potential in their own communities. And for the non-Middle Easterners and the just everybody else around the world, what I loved when Scott read the script before we even made the film, he said, you know what? I just felt like I can relate to the mom, he said, I felt like I can relate. You did not feel like when you're watching the story. So I think when you come from a place of love and authenticity, you just feel like, oh my, you can relate. And writers have this way, artists in general have this way where they can transcend religion, ethnicity, all these other things, and really just share a human story. And that is the sameness that I'm talking about. It's transcending everything. But at the surface, there are these differences that before we can all transcend these, we really have to be just honest with each other. It just helps all communities. And you know, at the end of the day, all these three communities right now, they all need to engage in conversation, an honest conversation. And Pomegranate has also opened that door for these conversations in a healthy way, that we need to talk. And we're not going to get out of the tensions that are happening today if we don't have a very healthy dialogue about it.
Weam Namou, thank you so much for talking to me about your film Pomegranate, being distributed right now by Freestyle Digital Media. You can buy and rent it on various streaming platforms. You can also, if you're like me, that like hard copies, get the DVD on Amazon. Where can we find you on social media if we want to keep the conversation going?
Well, everywhere you go, it's Weam Namou. That's my handle. That's my website. It's very easy.
And we're not going to make it 5 years for the next time we talk, huh?
No, actually, next time I would like you to come on my podcast. I was interested in what you have to say. Seriously, I want to give you that space because I think you share a lot of interesting things.
Wow, thank you so much. No, I really appreciate it. We'll make that happen. And I'm so happy we got to reconnect over Pomegranate. Next time, we'll do this in person and we'll actually have pomegranates with the conversation.
Yes, sounds good. Deal.